Welcome to the Martinus Cosmology Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the works and world picture of the Danish spiritual writer Martinus. My name is Mary McGovern and I'm your host for today. And my guest today is Torben Husum, who is the manager at the Martinus Institute. Welcome, Torben.
Thank you, Mary. I'm glad to be here.
Torben, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to meet Martinus's works.
Certainly. I have a couple of educations, I'm a school teacher, and I've worked a number of years as a school teacher, and I also have an education in computer science. So these are the things that I have done before I started here. I started working here. But I met Martinus' world picture in the beginning of the 90s, so a little over 30 years ago. And the way that I was introduced to Martinus was an article by Martinus in a very old Danish magazine called Gralen in Danish, or in English it would be The Grail. It was a magazine for spiritually interested people, or for people, spiritual seekers in Danish. But funny enough, I didn't read the article at the time. I just saw a picture of Martinus from 1934, I think, with very soulful eyes, or vivid eyes, and I kind of noticed him and thought that this man knows something. But then I didn't read the article. But I think about a year later, I found his books in the library, Livets Bog, the Book of Life, and I noticed the name, of course, and thought, this is the man with the eyes. And then I started reading, and it just went full speed ahead, and I read the 7 volumes of Livets Bog in about 3 weeks, I think, at the time.
Wow, that was quick. 3,000 pages.
I also, at that time, I didn't have anything to do, so I was living at my parents' at the time, not in the basement, but at my parents' house, and I didn't have any work at the time, so I was just living, consuming the books at a rapid pace. So and I've read them many times since then, but the first time, of course, I would have missed some things because I went so fast. But I was hungry and yeah. So, but I often wondered why I didn't read the article in the magazine, and I tried to remember or figure out what article it was. It was in Danish, but I haven't found it. And it's an old magazine, and it's not online, and if you search for it, you will find almost nothing on the internet. So I don't know, maybe the Institute at some point has a register for who has got the rights to print an article, so maybe it's possible to find out that way, I don't know, but I haven't been able to find out what article it was that I didn't read.
And we have an archive, we have many archives here at the Institute, and
yes.
We have an archive of secondary literature. So maybe we can have a look there and see if we have it.
Maybe even some of the old magazines, Gralen is in the archive. That would be interesting.
Yeah, we can have a look.
I can remember that the front page was orange on the magazine, and orange, and then Gralen and some picture. So yeah, but yeah. So.
But you were struck by Martinus's eyes, and then you.
I was initially drawn in by his eyes and didn't read anything until I found Livets Bog in the library. So, and then I think it took me a couple of years to go to lectures or to come to the Institute. I think I came to the Institute the first time in 2000 or 2001. So about 10 years later, I spent the first 10 years studying by myself without any contact to other people. Although I started in a mail group in 1998 or 99, I think, with a couple of people in Yahoo groups, a mail group in Yahoo groups, So that's the way that I met other people for the first time.
You met them online.
Met them online, yes.
Yeah. But later you began to come to lectures and courses at the Martinus Center, or what?
That's right. I started. I went to the institute first, a few lectures, and then I think the following summer I have met Lasse Vogelsang and a few other people through the mail group, and we went to the summer camp in Klint together that summer. So, and then it became a tradition for us to go every summer. So from 2001 and I think 12 or 13 years onwards, we went there every summer in the same week every summer.
Okay. Yeah, and now you work here at the Institute.
Yes.
So what does your work here involve?
My primary work is the day-to-day management of the Institute, making sure that the light is working and we have enough food in the house and things like that. But also have working with the volunteers, making sure that we have people for the jobs that we need jobs for. When we have a lecture, we have a lot of volunteers making coffee and putting out the cake and so on. So somebody has to coordinate that in some way, and that's my job.
And you also work with live streaming and the Institute's computers and internet and so on.
That's true. I also I've worked a bit with the web pages or the homepage of the Institute, but I have the responsibility for the streaming. If you've seen some of the lectures from the Institute, they are live streamed to Crowdcast on the internet. And we have a group of volunteers as well, very skilled technical people who do that. So I'm not alone, fortunately, because it can be a stressful job to live stream if you're sitting on your own and you have technical problems and so on. So we have a couple of people. So we have a lot of support and hardworking people doing that.
Of course, that's a resource that our listeners can go online and find.
Yes.
We live stream lectures here from the Institute in Danish. But we also live stream all our lectures from Martinus Center in Klint, and they're in Danish, Swedish, English.
But they're mostly in the summertime.
They're in the summer, but people can find them all year round.
Yes.
If they go into our Crowdcast page, I'll put a link to that in the text.
Yes, and maybe it's also worth mentioning that some of the old lectures from Crowdcast is being put on YouTube. So you can watch them for free on YouTube, the Institute's YouTube channel.
Yeah, we have several YouTube channels. We have one in English. People here are listening in English. We have one in Danish. And do we have one in Swedish?
I'm not sure, but at least a Danish channel and an English channel
and
on YouTube.
And a German one. And an Esperanto one.
And maybe an Esperanto, yes.
An Esperanto one. Anyway, there are a lot of resources on our free resources on the Martinus Institute's English YouTube channel. So I'll provide a link to that too.
And I think eventually everything from Crowdcast will be put on YouTube, but maybe with a little bit a year or two delay, maybe. Yeah. So the newest lectures will not be on YouTube, but in a year or two, the ones from this year will be. So
yes, and there's a small charge to listen to lectures on Crowdcast.
Yes,
it's not very much.
No, it's 55 Danish kroner, I think. So, but of course you can buy it from another country, and then perhaps it would be in euro or American dollars, maybe.
Yeah, whatever.
So
yeah. And one of the other things you've been working with is the Institute's homepage.
That's true.
Martinus.dk, and we've recently launched the new English homepage.
Yes.
Or website. Maybe you could tell us something about that.
Yeah, it's modeled by it's made to look similar to the Danish, the new Danish site with the same aesthetics and the same colors and pictures and so on. So it's I hope I'm not offending anyone by saying that it's an upgrade on the visual side compared to the old website. I think so. Maybe a bit easier to navigate as well. So, and there's a lot of information on this site, both concerning the institute and also the center in Klint. And now the season at Klint is over. But if you were interested in going to the center in the summer, then the program for every week would be available on the site. And also, of course, information about Martinus and also links to articles. And the newest edition is an online library, complete with search features, and you can search old contact letters and old articles as well. As the works by Martinus so far translated into English is searchable in the online library. So I think that's a very useful resource for people not speaking Danish. You don't have to go to lectures you can study on your own using the online library and find almost everything. There's and you know that better than me, Mary, but there's a couple of books, of course, that are not translated into English, but those that are is available.
Yeah, more than a couple. But,
more than a couple.
But as you say, all the books that are published in English are available online, and many articles and questions and answers by Martinus. And as you say, the old newsletters, old contact letters. So it's actually quite an enormous resource. So if you're feeling alone with spiritual science somewhere far away from Copenhagen, you have an enormous wealth of material to study online, quite free of charge.
Yes, and also not to forget this podcast and other podcasts and lectures by Martinus and other people. Some of them also on YouTube. So on YouTube you can find lectures by some of the people who worked with Martinus at the time, Mogens Møller and Erik Gerner Larsen, his first secretary, and so on.
Yeah.
There's a lot of material online.
Yeah, in various languages. So yeah.
Of course, most of the lectures from the old days are in Danish, but some of them are translated.
Yeah. And what can people experience if they come here to the Martinus Institute? Are people welcome to come?
Yes, they are very welcome, and we have opened 3 times a week for people just to come and experience the institute and maybe buy a book if they want to. We have a little cafe, and also they are welcome to come visit and have a guided tour of Martinus' old flat, where he lived until he died in 1981, and it's preserved almost like it was at the time, with his furniture and his symbols on the wall and all the things that he got from as gifts from people from around the world is on display. He even has a piano and an LP. Would you say an LP in English? An LP, an old record collection.
An old record collection, yes. Yeah.
And his desk, of course, where he sat and worked, and his typewriter and so it's interesting for people to come and see. And we have opened, as I mentioned, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 10 to 16 p.m.
10 to 4.
10 to 4 p.m. Yeah.
And we're open many Saturdays.
And we also open many Saturdays, and some Fridays, and some not many Sundays, but some Fridays as well. But Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, everybody is welcome to come. You don't have to make an appointment beforehand. You can just walk in the door.
You can just drop by.
Yeah.
We have a bookshop. We have a cafe. We have this we've established a new reading room, so people can sit and read the books while they're here if they want to. And,
in a very comfy chair.
Yeah.
So and there also there's a computer in this room, and it opens on the online library, so you can just sit there and study and read the books, and have access to the online library as well. So it's a room if you want to study or you want to have a bit of quiet. And also sometimes there are other people in the house that you maybe could ask questions and get a little bit of information from the people.
Yeah.
So you're most welcome to drop by.
Yeah, and on Saturdays, it's about every second Saturday there's a lecture here in the winter season. We're starting soon. So then the house is open on those Saturdays.
Yeah, we have most of the lectures at the Institute is in Danish. We don't have many, if any, at all this year, at least in English. But
no.
But yeah, maybe in the future we will have.
Maybe in the future.
Maybe in the future, yeah.
Yes.
So if everybody comes visiting, we will have a reason to plan lectures in English.
And we can always give a lecture in English here if people would like it.
Yeah, but that of course would require that you make an appointment beforehand.
Yeah,
and we have an agreement on who should do it and so on.
Yeah. So
but it's of course many people is fascinated by the old beautiful old building. It's over 100 years old by now, and it has its problems, but any old house would have that, of course. But people are always thinks that it's interesting, and the moment they step inside, I think it's a light and bright atmosphere and a beautiful house on the inside as well. So I think that everybody who studies Martinus at some point in their life, if at all possible, of course, should come visit, because it also gives you an kind of an insight into how Martinus lived and who he was. And he tried to live just like an ordinary person, and nothing special. It's not a castle, it's not a church. It's just a beautiful old villa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With a lecture hall with a large archive. That's one of the other things that the people do here is work with the archives and do an awful lot of work, taking care of the original manuscripts and the first editions and secondary literature and everything that's published by Martinus or about Martinus.
Yes.
So there's a big team of volunteers that works with the archives here.
Yeah, we have a lot of volunteers, and it's mostly on Tuesdays. So if you want to meet some of the people working with this, you can drop by on Tuesday, but not everybody has the time to talk, of course. But this is a time where we have most people in the house on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. And Torben, maybe people don't know that you're also an author, that you have written a couple of books.
Yeah, I have beside my job here, I have my own small publishing company. So I've published a few books by other people as well, and only one book by myself. But it's an interesting job, and I'm working on a book about Martinus at the moment. It's unfortunately only in Danish in the beginning, but maybe if people are interested and so on, that it will get translated into English. But it's a book about both the person Martinus and also about the world picture in the same book. So you get a little bit about Martinus. Who was he? Where did he live? How was his childhood and so on? So you know a little bit about the person before you read about the world picture. And I think that in my experience, many people read some of the books, the memoirs, or the book where people talk about Martinus as they remember him. Some of the most read books that people are interested in the person, and even though Martinus said he's not important and it's his analysis that are important, people are interested in the person, at least just to know who was he, is can we trust this guy? Did he do anything out of the ordinary in his lifetime, or lived a doubtful life or anything? But then the more you read about Martinus, and you realize that he was just a very nice and warm, loving person, that worked almost slaved in his entire life writing this book. But as he said himself, he was not. You should not be a slave to God. He said at the time that somebody asked him why he didn't write more. So it's important to relax and do other things, but he was very productive. But my point is that if you read an introductory book about Martinus, maybe you're interested in just a little bit about the person. Who was he? And then when you know, he seems like a nice guy, I want to spend time getting to know his thoughts or his world picture. Then you can do that in the same book. So that's
I think one of the things that struck me was that he was so honest. Like, he worked as a dairyman, and his last job as a dairyman was in Enighed Dairy here in Copenhagen. And he was asked to lie about something, but he couldn't do it. He couldn't do it.
He couldn't lie.
No. He couldn't lie.
And also, people working with him said that he always inspired or people to be better people in some way, without saying a word. Just his presence would inspire people to try to be better people. So that in itself is something of a characteristic for a good person, I think. You have that influence on people without saying a word. And the interesting thing is that I read another short book about Martinus by his first secretary, Erik Gerner Larsen. And that was written in 1933. And Erik Gerner Larsen had only known Martinus for about 5 years at the time, and Martinus had just published the first edition of Livets Bog in 31, I think. So not much was published at the time, but this book by Erik Gerner Larsen, the first part is almost just what will you say, recommendations in Danish, anbefalinger.
Recommendations.
Recommendations from people who had employed Martinus. Very positive recommendation about this is the best worker I've ever had, or this is the most sincere person I've ever met, and so on. So I think that Erik Gerner Larsen thought the same, that he would establish the character of Martinus before introducing the world picture, that people would like to know, who is this person? Then we can read what he's saying when we trust him in some sense. As much as you could trust a person that you haven't met, but
I found myself. I found Erik Gerner Larsen's little biography of Martinus in English in London in the 70s, and I was really fascinated. It's a very short little book.
It's a short book,
very quick to read.
And he tries, Erik Gerner Larsen, he tries to give the broad picture, or maybe that you get a sense of how everything is connected in this world picture. Of course, it's an impossible task in a little book. Martinus himself wrote thousands of pages just to try to make it clear. But I think in some sense it's one of the best short introductory books I've read, because I think this part with getting to know something about the person and then the world picture, in a sense, is a good way to be introduced to it, I think. But some people would say that the right way or the best way for them would be just to listen to a couple of lectures first. So everybody has their own way to.
And that would demand that you could understand him in Danish, of course.
Of course, if you would listen to Martinus, you have to be able to
understand Danish. And of course, for those who can understand Danish, we have an enormous resource on the Danish part of our website where you can listen to. I don't know, is it 100 or more? It's certainly a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot of lectures by Martinus himself. So for those who
And a lot of them were printed on CDs and sold on CDs, but we cannot sell CDs anymore. So actually, a lot of these CDs are given away freely. Also in Klint at the center, they're just lying in the restaurant that you can grab a free CD with lectures on if you want.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of them is online as well.
Yeah.
Of course.
I think they all are. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in presenting Martinus's world picture in such a little introductory book that you're writing, you talked about maybe 200 pages or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
What do you think is important to present? What are the most the ideas of Martinus that have made the greatest impression on you and that you want to convey to others?
Yeah, that's a good question. We talked earlier about me bringing my synopsis or my overview of the book, and I haven't got it. But it's of course it's a huge task to try to explain everything in under 200 pages. It's an impossible task. Yeah. But I would introduce some of the key subjects at least, and then some of the important thing I think is the meaning of the dark experiences on Earth. Why do we experience pain and so on? Like that you in philosophy would call the theodicee problem. I don't know if you in English would call it that.
I think it's called theodicy.
Theodicy.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that Martinus gives a reasonable explanation for this, and also reincarnation is important, and karma is important, but also the sexual development of male and females, and that we also moving towards a more humane and loving society. And I think that would not just be a comfort to many people living in the world now, because we have a lot of wars and a lot of things happening at the moment, or maybe it's always been that way, but it seems like everything is at a top at the moment in some way. But I think that Martinus' world picture not just offers a consolation or support, but a very deep explanation of everything. That when you grasp that, you can see how everything is connection, and why the reason that everything has to be the way it is, or has to unfold the way that it does. So those are the things I would focus on in the book, and maybe it's a bit of a mouthful, maybe also as a new reader that you're introduced to these topics, but I think they are essential for understanding the world picture. But I think also about food, vegetarian food, and something about the climate and the earth, and I think that would be some of the most important topics. Life after death, that there is a life after death, and that reincarnation is an important piece of the puzzle to get everything to make sense. I think is important to understand. And I know also from lecturers who have said that the two words that people are turned off most when they encounter Martinus is reincarnation and karma, maybe, and they have a lot of added meaning for some people, that when in the moment you say karma, then people say, oh, it's like that, and then they're not interested maybe, but you can Martinus uses the word himself, karma, but it can be explained in many ways, of course, but it's an important concept to
and I think certainly in English the word karma is nearly always used in a negative sense, like it's bad karma, a very unfortunate fate or destiny and so on. But Martinus, in my understanding, uses it more neutrally to mean the consequences of your actions, and they can be pleasant or unpleasant. So you can talk about so-called good karma and so-called bad karma. Yeah,
there's always a focus on bad karma. I think you're right, and it's important to say that it goes both ways, and you have good karma as well. And one of the symbols by Martinus shows this, that the karmic waves, would you call them that, can be of many different kinds, not just the bad kind, but but also the good kind, and also when you are between lives, when you are in the spiritual world, you can receive some of the good karma before you reincarnate in the physical world.
Yeah, he says there is a karmic connection from one period between incarnations to the next, but he doesn't go into any detail about that, but only saying that they're only pleasant. Yeah, and I think one of the things that really struck me when I read about these things is this whole question of the acceleration of evolution at the moment. Martinus says that things are accelerating very rapidly.
Yeah.
And I think this is what we see. Like you said, there are wars in many places, and you can wonder, why don't they stop? Everyone's hurting. People are being killed, and at least their physical bodies are being killed. They will, of course, reincarnate. But and then we see the sexual evolution with so many different gender issues and sexual identity issues. Who am I? Am I a man, a male? Am I female? Am I homosexual? Am I bisexual? Am I something else? So that am I trans or whatever? There's so much confusion, and it seems to be accelerating enormously. And for Martinus, this is part of the plan. This acceleration, and of course, when things go fast. Like if you're driving very fast and things go wrong, then it hurts more than if you're driving slowly. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on acceleration, but I think this is what we're seeing so much around us at the time, in these times. Economically,
that's true, and I think almost to a certain degree that when you know Martinus's explanations for these things, you almost can view it as a proof of concept, that you can say that this development is certainly proving Martinus right in many areas that weren't as visible or as much in the forefront by when he was alive himself. But this 40 years plus since Martinus' own lifetime, I think more and more of what he's writing about becomes evident and becomes very, in a way, obvious. Maybe that's a big word to use, but I think the way you mentioned the sexual problems and the problems people have with sexual identity and so on is very well explained by Martinus already in the 30s and 40s in the first of Livets book. And now we can see it clearly in young people today. So
and I think it's remarkable that the explanation of all this sexual transformation that's going on is embedded in works that Martinus started writing in the 1920s. First volume of Livets book was published in 1932, but so in that sense it's not that new, but I think for many people.
But maybe it also shows that Martinus was writing for the future, for the coming humanity, not for people. Of course, some people in his own time, of course, were how would you say receptive? Receptive, of course. But as time goes on, many more of the young people reincarnate and are more show signs of this development more clearly, I think. And society reflects this that you cannot fit everybody into these boxes, man or woman. Now you have to also in work situations and everywhere else take into account that people can have a different sexual identity or maybe also I think the work environment, if you use that as an example, is more sensitive to people's feelings and emotions nowadays. That you have HR management and all that, and you if you have a traumatic experience at your workplace, it's like a right to have a psychologist talk to you nowadays, that you consider people's feelings and not just say, be a man, be strong, live with it.
Yeah.
So I think that's all part of this development towards a more humane society. So it's becoming more and more obvious, I think. But it all depends on the perspective. Of course, it's easy to sit here in the welfare state of Denmark and to think that people are, or that things are going in the right direction. Maybe it's not that obvious if you're living on the streets of in a poor country somewhere, but but I think that's one of the things that could grab new people if you begin to have an interest in Martinus. That it's easier nowadays, I think, to see in the society around you that many of the things that he's talking about is right or not right, or maybe the wrong word to use, but plausible at least. You cannot because you cannot prove Martinus in the usual scientific way as a natural science. It's an internal process to prove to yourself that this is right. This is right for me. What he's talking about here, I think so. But that's a large philosophical, scientific discussion, maybe for another time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, but I think you're right that there's so much happening in society at the moment. I talked to one Danish school teacher in the summer here at the Martinus Center, and she said about 1 in 25 of Danish school children were identifying as transsexual or transgender. I'm not sure about the terminology today. And I thought, that's a lot. That's a lot.
And I can tell from personal experience, I've worked 15 years in 10th grade in Denmark, and a lot of the young people, and I even think more and more, are having problems with their sexual identity. And maybe it's also because it's okay to be open about it nowadays. And it wasn't so 25 years ago, maybe. So it's easier to say what you feel or how you are in this regard in the schools today without being bullied. But also young people are more understanding, and they're having parties where everybody is dancing with everybody or holding, giving hugs to everybody, and you don't have the oh, I'm a man, I don't give hugs among the young people.
No.
Not as much, at least, I think. It's a development that I think I've seen for the 15 years I've worked as a teacher. So, I think it's interesting. That,
and of course, many of the young people experience that their parents get divorced, that marriage is not what it was before. So that also gives them some experiences of suffering. Gives them many problems, maybe also solves some problems, but...
Maybe it scares them from getting married. They can say marriage is not for me, but of course marriage is still an important part of society. And we have to have kids in some way to secure the future of the human species. But it's not for everyone. So
no, and now it's more or less okay for it not to be be for everybody. Before, you were rather strange if you didn't want to have kids. But also, of course, you can say that young people, maybe they don't know exactly who they are at the point in their life. So, of course, they can have a phase where a girl is a lesbian, perhaps, for 3 years, and then she finds out later that maybe she wasn't a lesbian at all, and so on. Of course, it's a transitional thing. So. And, of course, young people are going through what Martinus calls repetition, which is a phase up to about... the first 30 years of your life, where you're repeating the essence of previous life. So you can repeat many phases, perhaps sexually, but also in other fields, like things you're interested in. You can be passionately interested in something for a while, and then suddenly you're interested in something else, and you've dropped that interest. So, which can be very frustrating for parents who invest a lot in the children's interest.
And now that you mentioned that, I think it's very interesting, and maybe that should be something that I should have in my own book. This about the repetition phase, because I think that's one of the things where in my own life I think that it proves Martinus right. The things that had happened in my own life, and that of course is very subjective. And if you tell this story to other people, they would just say, "Oh, it's just your imagination," or you're the only one who can see that, and that maybe is true. But I think that if you look at your own life and the things that you were interested in as a teenager and how things changed, you can see this principle in action, and that is true.
Yeah.
And maybe you can even say that a couple of years, a couple of lives ago, I was interested in this, and I can see the development in this life, and then maybe get a direction of where you're headed now. What are you interested in now? What would be the focus of your coming lives? Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's also meant a lot for me to understand the whole process of repetition and all the different phases one goes through and the different interests one has at different times. I can see it's all been leading somewhere.
Yeah, and I think most people would have that experience if they looked at their life up until now, especially in the years before they turn 30, where the repetition phase is ongoing. That it shows them their previous lives in essence, and then you can learn a lot about yourself by just analyzing this stretch of time.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, and then I think you can see that there is a direction in your own personal evolution through many lives. It's not just this one life that one sees a development.
Perhaps you can even see, as we say in Danish, the red thread. I don't know if you have that.
Yeah, we don't say the red thread in English, but there is a thread. There is a sort of theme, a direction going through one's various incarnations.
And it can, in a way, help you understand the situations that you encounter in your life now. If you encounter very difficult situations, or if you have difficulty in your marriage or with your parents or anything, that you can look at these events and maybe form a pattern and see that, this is I've done this many times before, and maybe I should try to look at this in another way, and that could solve some of my problems, maybe. So yeah.
I think it can also explain some weird coincidences too.
Yes, certainly.
So you're writing this book about Martinus, a kind of introduction, but what is it about Martinus's world picture that's made the biggest impression on you? What is it you would like to convey as the most important thing for you?
Yeah, I think it's about. I think it's about the most important thing is about the creativity and the spiritual worlds, and also the sexual development, I think, that Martinus describes. But I think as an author myself and somewhat of an artist in a sense, I think that the descriptions Martinus gives of the intuition energy, or the way that you get inspired for a piece of art and music and writing and so on, is very clear and very, very well described. And as an artist, you can recognize many things in this, in his description of that. So that was some of the things that grabbed me from the start. But also his explanation, of course, of the development that we are heading towards the real human kingdom, and we are still in the animal kingdom, and we come out of the animal kingdom. And I can remember his sentence about the Sphinx. I don't know how you translate it into English, but I think he sees us as a wounded refugee between two kingdoms.
Yeah,
and that
exactly.
sentence stuck with me for many years, and that's in a few words the exact description of the human situation.
It really is, with this animal head and human head and animal body.
Yeah,
we're a bit of both. We've got an animal side, and of course that's the cause of all the wars and all the troubles we have in society. But we have this human head, this human side that's growing in us. So
exactly. So and also to see that everything points to a brighter future if you look deep enough. That it's not all doom and gloom and wars, but you can somewhere detect traces of the real human kingdom, also in art and music, poetry, and flowers in the garden and so on. But I think it's there if you look deep enough.
So despite all the darkness around us, we're going towards the light.
I'm certain.
Yeah. On that optimistic note, I think we should wind up for now.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Torben Husum, for guesting this podcast.
It's been a pleasure.
And just to re-emphasize that any listeners, they are welcome to visit the Martinus Institute on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays from 10 to 4, and approximately every second Saturday. But you can look online to see when there's something going on Saturdays.
Except in the summertime.
Then
everything is happening at the summer center in Klint. But in spring and fall and winter.
Yeah. Good. Thank you for now.
You're welcome. Thank you.